W237BD Boca Raton, the Health and Wealth Radio Network, 1470 AM and 95.3 FM, the Health and Wealth Radio Network. Don't miss Lisa Macy with The Justice Hour, Tuesdays at 1 p.m. and Saturdays at 3 p.m. WNN.
People are learning in a classroom how money is made from home at Online Trading Academy. Just how much?
$100, $200, $300. They were able to get to $500 a day in a little over 8 months. $500 a day, folks, is $10,000 a month.
Get classroom instruction on how money can be made from home and how risk is limited. Learn stocks, options, futures, forex. Learn step-by-step from professional traders at Online Trading Academy.
Everyone starts off very small baby steps. You know, if you can't average $100 a day, there's no way you're going to be able to make $300 a day or $3,000 a day in the markets.
Thousands have learned how money can be made from home with limited risk at Online Trading Academy. Attend a free half-day class to see how it works in Broward and Palm Beach. Online Trading Academy. Call now. 561-674-9800. 561-674-9800. That's 561-674-9800.
Talk here, talk there. Talk 1470 AM and 95.3 FM, the Health and Wealth Radio Network. WNN.
The opinions expressed on the following sponsored program are strictly those of the host, guests, and callers, and not necessarily those of this station, its staff, management, or sponsors. Are you a family caregiver? Are you caregiving for someone who can no longer take care of themselves? Are you overwhelmed? This is CareGiverSolutions Info with Marcia Teal. Marcia will be hosting an hour of true stories and information, tips and updates of the latest research and necessary information in the caregiving field, focusing on you, the family caregiver. An Alzheimer's disease and dementia care expert, Marcia has 15 years of hands-on experience at Arden Courts, a leader in assisted living dementia communities here in the U.S. Marcia covers everything you need to know as a family caregiver, especially if you care for a loved one with Alzheimer's disease or other related dementia or chronic illness. If you have a friend or relative that is also a family caregiver, call them now. They won't want to miss a minute. And let them know they can watch on CareGiverSolutions.info. And they can listen on WNN 1470 AM in South Florida or nationally on the iHeartRadio app. Now, sit back, relax, and learn from our host, Marcia Teal, as she brings information to you that may just be the caregiving solution you need.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to Caregiver Solutions Info. I'm happy that you could join us today. We are live from Boca Raton, Florida, and this program is for the family caregiver and others that want to learn more about caregiving so they can help others, including their own family members. So if you're a caregiver, especially one dealing with Alzheimer's and dementia, the show is just for you. It was created so that you have another resource to go to. You can never, ever have enough information because the more education and information that you have as a caregiver will help you become a better caregiver. So thank you for joining us today. If you're watching us on the website, caregiversolutions.info, or on local South Florida radio, I'm glad that you did. We have another wonderful show for you today, but first I want to visit our Caregiver Corner. This is in particular for family members that have someone with Parkinson's. Now, Parkinson's is a disease that can lead to dementia. It's a Parkinson's-related dementia. And if you would like to know more about Parkinson's disease and attend a special event, it's coming up soon. Actually, the event is coming up on Tuesday, August 22nd, 2017. It's called the Live Well Parkinson's Workshop. It's a one-day event, and it's in Delray Beach at the South County Civic Center. The hours will be from 9 a.m. until 5 p.m., and it's hosted by the American Parkinson Disease Association, the South Florida chapter. It costs $30 per person to attend. And if you're interested in attending, you can register two different ways. You can call 800-825-2732, Again, 800-825-2732, or you can register online at their website, which is www.apdaparkinson.org/FL. And that's apdaparkinson.org/FL. So I want to let everybody know about this because it's coming up in just a few short weeks. And this is a wonderful event. It's a great educational opportunity to learn more about Parkinson's disease. Today, however, we're going to be talking about caregiving and aging and how the two come together, and just for the heck of it, throw in some dementia, and sounds like chaos to me. However, we have an expert in the field that's going to sort it all out for us today. And she's going to be talking about what happens as people age, as far as how they feel and what they think and what's going to happen to them in the future and how they can cope. And especially someone who's aging then also becomes a caregiver and how that changes things up. And again, how to cope. So these are very, very difficult times when families are faced with caregiving. It's something that is usually just thrust upon a family member, whether it's a spouse, an adult child, or even a grandchild. It doesn't matter how young, how old you are when you become a caregiver. It's something that you learn as you go along because, face it, we don't go to school and we aren't prepped to learn how to be caregivers. So the more we can learn about it to know what to expect in the future will help us along the way. So I'm very happy today to introduce to you my special guest. Her name is Denise Brody, and she's a psychotherapist and a licensed clinical social worker in private practice here in Boca Raton. And thank you so much for coming, Denise, and welcome.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
Well, I'm excited to have you because, you know, you have a lot of expertise in the field. As a matter of fact, how long have you been a psychotherapist?
Ooh, I'm afraid to admit, over 32 years.
Over 32 years. Wow. Well, you certainly wear it well. And, you know, with all that wealth of information, you really have the great credentials to be here to teach us and inform us and give us great advice for the topic that we're doing today. So the first thing that I want to ask you, Denise, you know, we're all getting older every day. Baby boomers are getting older. And as the baby boomers are getting older, a lot of them, you know, turning 65 all these years. And there's a statistic that says that 65 and up, you're at an increase, you know, for dementia. And half the people age 85 and up probably will get dementia. These are kind of scary statistics. So is this something that we should worry about? And as we age, what other things do people normally worry about?
Well, usually people that are in that age group, you know, starting with the baby boomers, will have to make some decisions and where they're going to live. They may have worked their whole life and had their career. They may have been homemakers, taking care of their children, and then they want to downsize their home, may decide to live in a smaller home, and they have an expectation if they're married that they're going to live in the retirement community, perhaps a 55 and over community, and have a wonderful life, healthy. And then the unexpected comes about where they may have health issues that start to surface, and they worry about all the decisions. Did they make the right decision? Making friends, how to social life.
So there's a lot going on as we age, a lot of decisions to be made and things to anticipate that we usually don't think of when we're in our youth or even in midlife, 30, 40, 50s, right?
Sure, even about death itself, how someone is going to pass away, if how much time do they have in the future, how should they be spending their time, will they be healthy?
Wow, so that's a lot. And so because it's a lot, I'm sure in the 32 years that you've been doing this, you've been very busy because this is something that, you know, it's not easy to work through. As a matter of fact, I wanted just to look here at your business card because as a licensed clinical social worker, you specialize in many things. And just to name a few of them, depression, anxiety, marital problems, chronic pain and illness, grief, loss, infertility, adoption, adults, adolescents, teens, and geriatrics. So you run the gamut from children all the way up to geriatrics.
Yes, I've been very fortunate in my career to be able to have a multitude of experiences in different areas of clinical issues that affect people every day.
Okay. So did you get your training here in Florida, or are you from somewhere else?
Originally, I'm surprised you can't hear by my accent, New York City.
Well, maybe that's why I asked, because I didn't want to guess, but we have a lot of listeners from the New York area, so they could relate to you, I'm sure. And you found your way down to South Florida like many people do.
Yes, I was in New York, and then, as they say, Jersey, and then I moved to Florida because I could not take the cold weather.
Well, that's certainly good for us that you're here in South Florida
Thank
to
you.
help everybody that are dealing with these problems. But today we're going to actually talk more about caregiving in general, when caregiving is thrust upon somebody and all the problems and worries that brings, and also then add to that dementia. Because, a lot of caregivers are caring for loved ones with chronic illnesses, and one of your specialties is chronic illness.
Yes.
And I know that you also help people that are caregivers when they're dealing with dementia issues.
Yes. Well, a lot of implications can occur through the life cycle, so that it depends how the person themselves have gone through transition. If they have a history themselves of depression, of anxiety, how did they cope with life's challenges over the years, so that when they are faced with something that comes up in their marriage, was their marriage an intact marriage also can impact. They could be someone who's depressed or anxious, their marriage was rocky, and then they're faced with their own anxiety and then caring for someone that they may not have loved throughout their marriage.
So it is true that they say when you go see a psychotherapist, you're actually looking at your life before this point in time to kind of see what experiences you've been through, because certainly your history does repeat itself in the future, as they say.
Exactly. And then the medical situation and the health of the caregiver as well, because if they're frail, if they have chronic pain, and depends what level their spouse is at the time that they have the dementia. If they're able to provide activities of daily living, help the spouse with toileting or bathing or dressing, if they can even leave the house, if they're worried that their spouse is going to be wandering.
A lot of things to worry about.
Yes.
And so hopefully we'll be able to provide some answers and some good advice and some tips to the caregivers out there to know what to do and maybe come up with a plan, because I always say have a plan when you're dealing with your caregiving, because if you have a plan, even if you don't ever have to execute the plan, better to have a plan than no plan, because then you're just, helter-skelter.
Right. Well, that's another set of issues, how to make these hard decisions.
Right. And we're going to get into all of that and more when we come back. We're going to take a quick commercial break, and we'll be right back with Denise Brody, psychotherapist, who's going to break it all down for us. So stay with us. We'll be right back.
Arden Courts is not just a place to live, it's a place to call home. Residential living combined with quality caregiving. This is the philosophy behind Arden Courts. Communities created exclusively for individuals with Alzheimer's disease and related dementia who would benefit from a safe and structured environment. For additional information about any of the unique services Arden Courts provides, call 888-478-2410 to locate a community nearest you. Inquire about our educational seminars, resource library, or support groups, or simply feel free to ask questions you may have about Alzheimer's and related dementias. At Arden Courts, we know, we understand, and we can help, because memory care is all we do. Remember, call 888-478-2410 for additional information about any of the unique services Arden Courts provides.
Being unable to recognize the obvious often occurs with Alzheimer's or related dementias, even among their caregivers. When the time comes for you to decide that someone you love needs more help than you can give, will you be able to recognize it? Don't wait for a crisis to make the decision for you. Talk to Arden Courts. Memory care is all we do. We know, we understand, we can help. To learn more, visit arden-courts.com. Arden Courts follows equal housing opportunity guidelines.
CareGiverSolutions.info. If you have a question or wish to share a story, call into the show at 888-565-1470 and talk with Marcia. Now, back to Caregiver Solutions.
And I'm back with my special guest, Denise Brody. She is a licensed clinical social worker and psychotherapist in private practice here in Boca Raton, Florida. And today, Denise, we're talking about aging and then throwing in dementia and caregiving on top of that. And we've got like a double whammy here. You know, it's hard enough, I think, for people to go through everything that they have to go through as they age with health problems and making a lot of major life decisions about moving or downsizing. And sometimes people can even think about their own mortality and worry about, so much that they get depressed and what's going to happen to me and who's going to take care of me and what do I do? And I mean, that's a lot, and it just sometimes just comes barreling down on us like a snowball effect.
Exactly.
Are you seeing more people in your practice now dealing with these issues?
Yes, definitely. I was going to say it's more than just having a wrinkle on your face at this point or Botox. It's more about living at home with your spouse. And I was just thinking about this woman that I had in my practice, and she came in for marital issues, and she kept saying
she was having marital issues. What was going on? She was fighting with her husband.
Fighting constantly. He was yelling at her. She couldn't do anything right. She was annoyed with him in the supermarket. He was demanding to buy things that he ordinarily wasn't going to.
And they've been married a long time?
53 years.
And was this something new with the fighting and all the marital problems?
Yes. I mean, they fought years ago a little bit, but this time it's definitely more.
Okay.
Definitely.
So she came in to see you because she's fighting with her husband all the time.
Fighting with the husband and escaping from the house by going shopping and not knowing how to deal with him. And then as I was talking to her and I got to evaluate the situation more, it sounded like he needed an evaluation to see whether he had some dementia. His behaviors seemed very different than they had been years ago. And then so she did go and have an evaluation.
So you made that recommendation?
Yes.
For him to get tested?
Yes, because she had the expectation that he was still the man that she married, which of course he is, but the way they acted and interacted and the way he was in social situations, people would get annoyed with him. He was sort of abrasive at times, and that was out of character for him. And so he did go for the evaluation, and he's in a clinical trial right now for Alzheimer's.
So when he went for the evaluation, he was diagnosed with some Alzheimer's? With Alzheimer's
yes,
disease?
Yes.
So you were the first one to pick up on that because
Yes.
the wife came to see you because she's having problems rather than maybe the husband's regular primary care physician or somebody else picking up on that. So the wife was she surprised when you mentioned that to her, that maybe you should have him checked out for neurological issues?
Yes, she was. In fact, and I had her sign a release so that her children can speak to me as well. And they had been so grateful that I called them because they didn't know what was going on in the house. They never heard their parents argue the way they have now. And also the social situations at times, the husband would be very belligerent. She would become embarrassed in a social situation. So now that he was diagnosed, he's on medication. And I'm teaching her the coping skills so that she won't just run and escape and maybe have that expectation that she used to have that he's going to behave a certain way.
It's really rough, that she wouldn't even pick up on that.
Right.
Wow. So what happened with her now?
Well, now he actually goes to an adult daycare center. It's progressed, but I've been working with her because every step of the way, when there's a decline, and she wasn't able to just pick up and go shopping if she had a fight, because then it became unsafe, and he started to deteriorate. And she would help him in the shower, and he didn't know that he had shampoo on his head. Things like that would come up, and so he goes to adult daycare, and then she's able to meet her friends and play cards and have lunch with her friends.
So now that she's spoken with you and he got the diagnosis, things are better.
Yes, because it's definitely less traumatic, and she's sharing her feelings and her thoughts and emotions, and I'm helping her work on decreasing her anxiety. And of course, there's loss and grief associated with the marriage that they had over the years.
Tell me more about that.
Well, the marriage over the years, they used to do everything together. So now it is different, because a lot of my patients say that it's a couple's world, and so they feel isolated. And a lot of their own friends also have passed away or have health issues, so they have to go out and find new ways to make friends and to socialize so that they don't isolate.
Is that a big issue, isolation?
Very big issue, yes. And a lot of times their children live far away, and they forgot how to use these social skills to reach out to people, to connect also.
And what about friends that don't understand?
Right, exactly. Well, that's re-traumatization for them, because they've accepted it, but then when they're in a social situation, they feel that they have to act a certain way in front of their friends, or that they have to keep explaining the same situation, why the spouse doesn't act the way he did when they went out to dinner as 6 couples, and now he's acting a certain way. So then it's easier not to go out anymore and to stay home, have dinners alone.
It's tough.
Yes.
Tough for caregivers to live that way, you know?
Sure, and then their own health, if they're not feeling well, if they have chronic pain, they still have to worry about how their spouse is going to get through the day, what's going to happen when they come home from adult daycare.
Excuse me. Apologize for the coughing. I'm getting over a little cold this week. Now that she became a caregiver, let's just go back to your example of your patient. Mm-hmm. She's a caregiver now, and I know she's understanding what's happening with her husband, but is she taking more steps to get more information of how to continually to deal with his behaviors?
Yes, well, I work with her on the different stages, and also the long-term care planning, and not to feel guilty to take care of herself as well, or as the needs of the spouse changes, as far as getting some help at home, or going out at night with a friend for dinner. Learning.
So these are this is a couple who's been married 50, 60 years, you said?
Yes.
In this particular example, which is a real life example, was the husband the one in charge of the finances?
Yes, and that's I'm glad that you raised that, because that's very difficult also, because now she has to be the one to take care of everything when she was dependent on her husband.
So how difficult is it for an older person who never had to worry about the bills, pay the bills, worry about, bank accounts and maybe CDs and when they're due, and take care of everything, that's all of a sudden that's delegated to her because obviously he can't do it anymore? Is she having a hard time learning about all of this?
Yes, managing the bills, the meal preparation, also just managing doctor appointments. I had a woman in the other day, and she lives in an independent living in Boca, and she now has to take her husband to a skin doctor, and that might be something that you or I think is easy, but she has visual problems herself. She doesn't know how to process what's going on. So as far as making appointments in an appointment book, that's very difficult for her to keep going to the different doctors, keeping the appointments, traveling to them.
Mm-hmm.
It's a full-time job.
Right. So caregivers have to take care of another person, not only themselves, but if they're not able-bodied or they're having their own issues, this becomes pretty stressful for them and overwhelming.
Right. And again, I can't emphasize enough, it depends upon how they coped when they themselves were younger, because if they have a history of depression or an anxiety disorder or bipolar disorder, and then they're thrust into this, it can definitely impact how they're caregiving their loved one.
So in this particular case, if you found someone that had the history that you just mentioned, and now they're a caregiver, and now they're relating in that way with a spouse, what can be done about that?
Well, in the therapy, working on increasing the coping skills, working on coping skills and to express their own feelings. This reminds me of my mother, who's 92 years old in New York, and she always never really got what I did for a living. And she always says, even to this day, what do they talk to you about? But it's someone who has those emotional ups and downs. And maybe if you have bipolar your whole life and you want to lay in bed all day because it's difficult for you, you have impaired sleep cycle yourself, and then you have to go out and take care of your caregiver or manage the bank account, it's fatiguing. So we work on the coping skills.
Yeah, that would be pretty difficult all of a sudden to have responsibility to take care of another person, and and it's interfering with your lifestyle, basically.
Right. I had personal experience with it as well with my own sister, who my brother-in-law passed away, and my sister was very dependent on my brother-in-law, and I had to teach her how to pump gas.
Really? Because she'd never done it before.
Never pumped gas, right. And there are a lot of women that do come in my office that have never pumped gas, managed a checkbook, procured a doctor's appointment for anybody.
Would you say that it would be advantageous if you become a caregiver to start learning how to do these things early on and not wait, because at least you're going to be ahead of the game?
Definitely. But there has to be a balance between feeling overwhelmed and anxious and causing some anticipatory anxiety and being more methodical and prudent and educating yourself.
So we're talking about people coming in and telling you their problems, like your mother. You said, well, Mom, they tell me their problems. I imagine that's what you probably answered her.
Exactly.
Is there a stigma with that?
Well, I think that in a certain generations, perhaps, maybe some people, but nowadays I find that I'm a Medicare provider, and I take all insurances, and I find that Humana, a lot of elderly people, older folks, baby boomers are coming in to talk about these issues.
But, a psychotherapist, people say, I don't need to talk to a shrink. I don't need to tell everybody my problems. Mm-hmm. I can handle it. I can do it myself. I don't need to tell a stranger my personal, private thoughts.
Right.
Do you get this from people, like a resistance, or when people come to you, have they already gotten past that?
Well, some of them come in and they say, I don't know what to expect. I've never been in therapy before. I can't believe I'm 73 years old. I had a woman whose husband has been in independent living, and he is deteriorating, and she came in hysterical, saying, I was always a very strong woman, and I can't believe I'm breaking down, and she doesn't want to be a burden on her children. So she kind of likes the idea that she can come in and talk to me, and I give her my best clinical opinion and work with her.
So she'd rather lay it out on the table with you than to burden her own children?
Yes, definitely.
Okay, very good. Well, we're going to go to commercial break, and we'll be right back.
Do you need the advice of an elder law attorney? Perhaps you find it difficult or overwhelming.
The inability to recognize the obvious often occurs with Alzheimer's, particularly among the family members who care for them. When the time comes for you to decide that someone you love needs more help than you can give, will you be able to recognize it? Don't wait for a crisis to make the decision for you. Talk to us. We know. We understand. We can help. Arden Courts. Wandering is a common problem for people with Alzheimer's or related dementias. It's also a problem for family members who care for them. Keeping them safe and secure means never letting your guard down. And even though deep down you know it's time, it hurts to have to ask for help. But it could hurt them even more if you didn't. We know. We understand. We can help. Arden Courts. Feelings of depression, isolation, and frustration are common among persons living with Alzheimer's or related dementia.
565-1470 and talk with Marcia. Now, back to Caregiver Solutions.
Hi, I'd like to take this opportunity now to thank our national sponsor, Arden Courts Memory Care Community. Arden Courts is a wonderful assisted living that specializes in Alzheimer's and other related dementia care. They love to help not only the residents, but the caregivers as well. And so they would like to offer you a free book. This book is called the 36-Hour Day Book. It's a wonderful resource for caregivers. It has lots of tips, advice, definitions, explains about the different kinds of dementia. And this book is free. All you have to do is call Arden Courts on their toll-free line, which is 888-478-2410. Again, 888-478-2410. Tell them you heard about the offer on the Caregiver Solutions info show, and they'll be happy to get your name and address and make sure that they get a book off to you right away. So I encourage you, if you'd like to learn more about the caregiving journey that you're going to be going on, you can't go wrong with reading the 36-Hour Day. So give Arden Courts a call and get your own book, and you'll be glad that you did. My guest today is Denise Brody, and we've been talking about caregiving and as we age and all the things that we have to worry about when we age. And Denise, it's a lot, and it's really kind of overwhelming when you start thinking about all the changes that people go through as they age, and a lot of things that come down on top of them as far as responsibilities if they become a caregiver, especially if they're making some major life decisions, and you help people with making those decisions. Because, I mean, don't people sometimes get paralyzed because they don't know what to do?
Yes, and they don't know how to access the resources, or they have a false sense of security thinking. I'll give you a great example.
Sure.
People sometimes, my own parents at the time, thought that Medicare takes care of everything when you're older.
Everything.
And they mean help at home. So they think, oh, if something's wrong, I'll just tap into my Medicare. Or if I have to go to a nursing home, Medicare is going to pay for it. So they don't know that a skilled nursing facility is definitely not paid for by Medicare. And so that brings up the financial implications for long-term care planning, safeguarding your funding, and maybe seeking out an attorney who specializes in estate planning to prepare for Medicaid planning.
Yeah, I've had that question a lot over the years from caregivers that, didn't really know much about Social Security and Medicare, and thinking that Medicare is going to pay for the assisted living. And I had to explain, no, it doesn't. It pays for your doctor bills and your hospital bills, and you have supplements. But, when it comes to placement in assisted living or a nursing home, mostly it's private pay unless they have long-term care insurance. Or in what you just mentioned in another scenario where they have no money and possibly they do have to resort to the Medicaid option in whatever state that they live.
Right, exactly. Or when there could be someone who has a fall, they might have Alzheimer's and Parkinson's, or lose their balance, they fall. The caregiver brings them to the ER. They may not meet criteria for admission either in the hospital. And then they're in the ER, and then the wife or cannot take care of the husband. So what do you do in a case like that? And then someone might say, you should get somebody at home. You need to have somebody to help you. It's a great suggestion, but if you don't have the financial backup, then it's difficult.
Yeah, I've seen too many caregivers between a rock and a hard place. You know, even one that actually had long-term care insurance, but it was so low that it didn't really help her because it required copays, and she didn't have the money to make the copays. So
Right.
even though she had the insurance for placing her husband, she couldn't afford the difference. So here she'd paid out all these premiums over the years, and it really wasn't going to help
Couldn't
her.
use it, sure. Or now people are living longer with chronic illness, chronic pain, chronic illness. So the other implication that I always try to tell people is that it depends upon what your financial situation is, but your money could get depleted. Like a lot of times a caregiver will want to keep their loved one in the home. But if there's only a certain amount of money that they have, I'm giving you an example, like $65,000, and if they deplete all that money, then what happens? They're still at home and they still need that 24-hour care or 12-hour care. So that's why it's so important to know what the resources are for the future. Placement might be indicated.
Right. So as a social worker, I would think that now this is what you do to help them to the next step, is to give them those resources, because social workers are always so helpful, and you're such a great person, and I know you have a good heart. And so you are able to give the resources to your clients so that you can help them in the community. Because, I mean, there's two choices. You look to your family or you look to the community for resources for help.
Exactly, yes. And I consider myself a resource junkie. My background has always been hospital-based. I've always had a private practice and worked at a hospital. So I've always gotten the best resources, I feel, for my patients, wanting to help improve the quality of their life. And so just to give you an example, in Broward County, in the Area Agency on Aging, Gail Janata, she's wonderful. She's a nurse case manager. She can go into the home for free and evaluate what resources that can be linked to who's ever in the home.
I think it's real important for caregivers to know that they're not alone and there are resources out there. Sometimes they just don't know how to find them.
Exactly. And then we're also talking about people who have children. There are people, the next set of issues that I'm finding is a lot of people may not have married, or they don't have children, and they don't know how to access any kind of resource. And if they're going through medical treatment themselves, or they themselves know that they have Alzheimer's, what do they do? Should they progress? So those are other resources.
Wow, a lot to go on. When caregivers are faced with these options, like you mentioned, staying at home or going into an assisted living or selling their house or downsizing, I mean, these are things that they go through. How do they make the decision when they don't know what to do?
Well, it could be very traumatic. And again, we always go back to how did they cope before. And that, I can have someone that come in. I had a woman recently just putting her house on the market. She put her house on the market 5 times and took it off 5 times because the thought of leaving her home that she's lived in for 30 years was very traumatic. So it is very difficult. But eventually they're going to have to accept the situation. That's a key part of accepting the fact that this is the reality now and that you have to move into this next transition in life.
But how does someone get to that point of acceptance?
Well, hopefully in the therapy, working on the coping skills and talking about the acceptance. And sometimes besides the therapy, going to a psychiatrist and having medication prescribed would help as well. It depends upon the caregiver. If their appetite is diminished and they're not sleeping and they're not taking care of themselves and they're so overwhelmed that they cannot make a decision, then I would refer to a in-network psychiatrist to evaluate them.
So you do that sometimes?
Yes.
Mm-hmm. And then the psychiatrist sometimes helps them with medications?
Medication, right, to
Okay.
help with the serotonin so that they're able to function to a level where they're able to make a decision.
It is so overwhelming, for caregivers with everything they have to do and all the responsibilities. And they always say stress kills. And we know that because we've seen it.
Definitely.
So you want to try to eliminate that. Matter of fact, next week we're going to be talking more and more about how caregivers can take care of themselves to eliminate that stress. When someone comes to see you as a psychotherapist and for the very first time, can you walk me through a typical session? Because I know a lot of people may be worried about going for the first time. They're scared. I don't know what to expect. What are they going to do? What are they going to ask me? Is there like a typical first meeting that you could explain how someone could maybe anticipate going and
Sure.
relating to that?
Sure. Well, the first part of the evaluation is more of an evaluation. When a physician evaluates a patient, it's a H&P, a history and physical. When I do an evaluation, I like to get as much history of the person. I want to know even what their educational level is, because I can't take for granted that someone is going to understand what I'm saying and the vocabulary, the words that I use. I want to know were they married, were they single, the history of mental health issues. Have they ever been in a psychiatric hospital? Do they feel suicidal or homicidal? Have they ever been arrested? Their family support system, who do they live with? And get a sense of who they are. Are they retired? Did they ever work? And then I ask them what brings them here. And I like to listen to what did bring them here so that I can evaluate that situation. And also ask them about their symptoms. Anxiety, it could be depression, it could be insomnia, chronic pain, all of that. If do they consider themselves a pessimist or an optimist? That gives me a key into how they cope their whole life.
Wow, you really get into detail to extract all this information. To me, as you're explaining this, I picture a box of jigsaw puzzle pieces that someone just dumps out on a table. And all those pieces are bits of information that you've gotten from your client, and then it's your job to put that puzzle together by seeing how the pieces fit to come up with the end solution. I mean, that's just an analogy, but is that kind of what it's like?
Exactly. I wanted to bring up another point too. If they say that if they do have children, sometimes the children may not agree with what the mother is doing as far as caregiver issues, and the mother doesn't know which child to listen to. There might be sibling rivalry between the children, and that also impacts on the caregiver.
Yeah, because now they're divided between the children of one says yes, one says no, one says do, one says don't. So you got to get all that information and kind of get the relationship between the siblings, the relationship between the mom and the dad with each sibling. So it really goes deeper than just that one person.
Yes.
It really extends, because they always say that, Alzheimer's or dementia is a family disease, because it does impact everyone in the family.
Definitely.
It really does.
Right. And also with their own peers as well. They might be coming in to say that they may want to go for the placement option, and they may be getting feelings of guilt and shame because their friends may not understand them or one of their children.
Well, I'm glad you brought up the G word, because that's a big one, the guilt. Mm-hmm. Why do caregivers feel guilty?
Because, well, it depends, again, how they were raised and what their belief system is. Beliefs can turn the situation different. I always say anybody that's come to my office will know that Denise Brody always says guilt is a wasted emotion. But a lot of people have that belief that they're doing the wrong thing and that they have to live with their spouse until the day the spouse passes away. But if it's unrealistic and it's not a safe situation and they're deteriorating themselves, then they have to move forward and make that decision. But they will feel guilty because a lot of times, to alleviate the stress, they will talk to people and they'll get 10 different opinions, and that impacts on why they feel so guilty.
So is it better for caregivers not to be asking their family members and friends what to do?
Well, I don't mind that they ask them, but I help them with boundaries. In other words, when they do make that decision, to maybe hear what their child has to say, but also say, I just want to let you know that I'm coming from a different place because I'm the one that has to make sure that your father's safe at night, or bathes your dad, or whatever the situation is, to try to set the boundaries so that people won't be so judgmental.
Yeah, that's a big one too, because we always hear about family members that are not local and that try to, tell caregivers what to do when they're not even in the same state, and they're not living that life. They're not in the trenches. And I always said that caregivers should invite them down, say, come down for a week or 2 weeks. Right. I'll take a vacation.
Sure.
You take care of your dad. And when they take me up on that suggestion, it's really eye-opening, because the children really get a sense of, gee, how does mom do this?
Sure.
Because I didn't think anything was wrong with dad.
Exactly.
How does she do this?
Right.
Right?
Right. And it's the first time that they'll ever observe what the real situation is going on in the home. And a lot of times there's one child that will step up to the plate, but yet the other one doesn't. That's another implication as well.
A lot of family dynamics go on with this, and it's not uncommon, caregivers. So if you're experiencing this in your own life, know that it's fairly normal. So we're going to take our last commercial break, and we'll be right back.
Do you need the advice?
Being unable to recognize the obvious often occurs with Alzheimer's or related dementias, even among their caregivers. When the time comes for you to decide that someone you love needs more help than you can give, will you be able to recognize it? Don't wait for a crisis to make the decision for you. Talk to Arden Courts. Memory care is all we do. We know, we understand, we can help. To learn more, visit arden-courts.com. Arden Courts follows equal housing opportunity guidelines. Feelings of depression, isolation, and frustration are common among persons living with Alzheimer's or related dementias. It's common among those who care for them, too. It takes a lot of patience and courage. It also takes knowing when you can no longer do it alone. At Arden Courts, memory care is all we do. Talk to us. We know, we understand, we can help. Don't let guilt keep you from making the right decision. Visit arden-courts.com. Arden Courts follows equal housing opportunity guidelines. Somewhere at the corner of bewildered and confused is a lost mother, a father, a sibling, a grandparent. Wandering is a common symptom of Alzheimer's or related dementias and can often make those who care for a loved one feel
about any of the unique services Arden Courts provides. You are listening to your host, Marcia Teal, an Alzheimer's disease and dementia care expert on CareGiverSolutions.info. If you have a question or wish to share a story, call into the show at 888-565-1470 and talk with Marcia. Now, back to Caregiver Solutions.
And we're back with Denise Brody, licensed clinical social worker and psychotherapist in Boca Raton in private practice. This has been very interesting, Denise, talking about the feelings that caregivers experience and all the things that we have to worry about as we age, and then being thrust into the role of caregiving. So it's very, very stressful and overwhelming. And sometimes when people do come to you, do they ever say that they wish they hadn't? Or do they say, I'm glad I did, but I wish I'd come sooner? What do you usually get?
The second one.
The second
they're so
one?
glad, yes, and that they should have come sooner.
Yeah, and most of them feel that way by the time they get there. and they realize that you can help them.
Sure.
And that talking about their feelings and talking about the situation can help, because a lot of people feel like, what good is it going to do?
Right. Well, keeping it in can cause more depression, just keeping it in, like a pressure cooker, you know.
Yeah, that's a good analogy too. A lot of people are very private and they don't want to share. But, you know, we always say it takes a village to take care of someone with dementia, and you have to have your team. And you mentioned earlier that when you give out resources to caregivers that are overwhelmed, and you kind of give them like a little path to go on and different projects or homework to do, like go seek a elder law attorney, make sure all your affairs are in order. And maybe you might suggest their loved one going to a day center so they can get a break. But
Yes.
what other kinds of things would you recommend?
Well, also, and I did want to mention, I'm a military provider, so I also want to know a lot of times if the person was a veteran, they should tap into those veteran resources. They can get a case manager at the hospital or the local VA centers to help them with long-term care planning, or put them on a waiting list for a VA home if that's indicated for them.
Yeah, good idea.
Yeah, but as far as coping, it would be, I do recommend self-care, and try to get a hobby, join a book club, get out, exercise. A lot of times, if there is an aide in the house, the caregiver may not want to leave the house, which is counterproductive. So to give yourself permission to go to the pool, read a magazine.
And not feel guilty.
Right, exactly.
Don't
Exactly.
get rid of that guilt. And it's
Sure.
because a lot of people feel like they don't deserve it. They don't deserve to have fun when they're a caregiver.
Exactly. And also, a lot of times when we talked about the isolation, some people feel bitter in the situation, and they feel that they don't want to play cards or be with people who they've been with. And so sometimes it's best to go to a senior center somewhere, or go somewhere that they're not known, and try to reach out to new friends.
That's a great idea.
Yes.
So somebody that doesn't really know your past, that eliminates that judgment
Exactly.
that people fear. They fear that a lot.
Exactly. And I was going to say crafts are very important. There was just an article in the New York Times by Jane Brody, no relation, about knitting being very therapeutic, or the repetitive motion of knitting, crocheting, even the coloring books for adults.
That's become very popular.
Yes.
The adult coloring books are
Yes.
everywhere.
Yes, I have them in my office too.
And just the fact of concentrating on something, get your mind off of what you're going through. Is that the idea?
Well, that is, and also creating something when you have chaos in your life, but you can make a scarf for a homeless person, and that from start to finish, you create something that makes you feel more empowered inside.
And giving back to others at the same time.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right.
So if someone hears us today and they've been thinking about getting some other resources and needing some help, and maybe they want to just reach out and talk to somebody about their situation, how could they contact you?
They can call me at my office in Boca Raton, which is at 20283 State Road 7, Suite 300. And my telephone number is 561-477-4211.
Okay. Why don't you give that telephone number out one more time?
561-477-4211.
And they just call you up and make an appointment?
Yes.
Okay.
Make an appointment. I'd be happy to meet with them.
Okay, great. So if you're a caregiver and you've heard something today that struck a chord with you, and you feel that maybe I should do it, is there any obligation once they come to continue, or is one time sometimes all it takes?
Right, sometimes it's I'm a cognitive behavioral therapist, so I'm not Freudian where they're going to have to lie on the couch and tell me, how they grew up. But so I'm very solution focused. I'm very interactive, problem solving as well. Sometimes people come one time, sometimes people come weekly, monthly. It all depends. And I do take every insurance. I'm on every insurance plan.
So does most the insurance, they cover this for therapy?
Yes.
For talk therapy?
They do. Yes, they absolutely do. Sure.
Okay. So like someone was on Medicare and they had a secondary insurance, that secondary would probably cover?
Yes, 100%.
Wow, that's great. So it doesn't
Yes.
cost anything.
Sure, and I wanted to tell you also, a lot of primary care physicians in the community do know me, and so I get tons of referrals from physicians in the community.
Yeah, well, after 32 years, I think you have a great reputation.
Yes.
So, of course,
Thank you.
that's going to be beneficial for people that know you and can refer to you. I think it's all about the networking, and, what we all need to do is to help people and help
Yes.
each other. And you certainly do
Sure.
that quite a lot,
Thank you very much.
And I appreciate you being here today. So in parting, we have just a minute left, but in parting, what would you say to caregivers that are out there struggling? Any last words?
I would say don't struggle by yourself. Help is here. Please give me a call. I'd be happy to work with you and help you function better and improve the quality of your life.
Yeah, so don't wait, right? That's
right,
the thing.
exactly. Don't wait till it's a crisis.
Don't wait.
Right, exactly.
Do you see a lot of crisis situations?
Yes, I do.
You do. That's
Sure.
unfortunate.
Sure.
Is it then too late for them to resolve it, or can you still
No.
usually get them through it?
Yeah, I don't think it's ever too late, but so at any stage they can absolutely give me a call and I'd be happy to help them, sure.
Awesome.
Yes.
All right, so you heard it from Denise Brody, licensed clinical social worker and psychotherapist in Boca Raton, talking about aging and caregiving and dementia and how it all relates and how she can help you untangle it all. So give her a call. Thank you so much for being here. And thank you all for joining us today. I'm glad that you did. So remember, we'll be back same time, same place next week on Tuesday. Whether you're on local radio or on CareGiverSolutions.info, you can watch us live stream. In the meantime, I want to say to you, give somebody a hug because they need it and so do you. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
Thanks for joining us for this week's Caregiver Solutions with Marcia Teal. Join us next week as Marcia, who has 15 years of Alzheimer's disease and dementia care experience, brings you more needed information to help with the care of your loved one. This show can be seen again on CareGiverSolutions.info, and questions can be left on the site, which may be used on the program to help others. See you next week for more Caregiver Solutions. The opinions expressed on the preceding sponsored program were strictly those of its hosts, guests, and callers, and not necessarily those of this station.